Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, whenever you happen to be listening. This is the LSU Sports Insider Podcast for Thursday, March the 20th. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Koki Riley and Scott Rabalais. Lots to talk about today. This is going to be one of our patented combo shows. We've got LSU baseball with a huge series coming up this weekend in Austin, Texas, to face the University of Texas Longhorns. We also have the LSU gymnastics team in Birmingham, Alabama for the SEC championship meet. So we are here. I'm Zach Ewing. Koki Riley is our advocate LSU baseball beat writer, and Scott Rabalais, the worst dressed among us easily, is
I know, right?
Yeah, clearly he is a jack of all trades. He covers a little bit of everything over at LSU, including gymnastics. And so we're going to talk about all those things. We're going to start, guys, with baseball. And this is a fun one, man. This is Koki. This is when you circle when the schedule comes out is, LSU at Texas, their first road SEC series, Texas first home series in the SEC. And so going to be a great atmosphere out there in Austin and a big series too.
Yeah, and it's setting up to be a top 10 matchup. So that's very, very exciting. That's even better than I expected it to be heading into this season. And, Texas has won, 17 straight games. They're 17-1 on the season. And this is going to be, a lot of fun. And it's going to be a big test for this LSU team because I don't think they faced a team as good as Texas so far this season. So there's just going to be a lot to talk about with this one.
Yeah, and Rab, I know you're so good at the big picture storylines, and this is, if you talk about the nation's premier college baseball programs historically, maybe we could throw Florida State or a USC or somebody in there, but as far as good historically and still very good now, Texas and LSU are about as good as it gets.
Oh, yeah. LSU 7 College World Series titles, Texas with 6. And 6 that they've won over many decades. Texas, you go look back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, they were making College World Series appearances, and they've made a bunch of them. I think more than any other school. So yeah, this is potentially one of the great rivalry points for LSU and Texas as Texas now joins the SEC. Obviously, they're going to play in football. They're not going to play this season. Eventually, they will play. Maybe could play the SEC championship game one day. Women's basketball is big. Both programs are very good, and this is one of the brighter lights. I would say at Texas, maybe baseball is probably not quite as big as what it is at LSU, but it's very big, and they have a great tradition. And it's two longtime powerhouses going at it in neighboring states. It's exciting stuff to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. We do want to encourage you to subscribe to our LSU Sports at NOLA.com YouTube channel. We also had speaking of big weekends, LSU women's basketball obviously is hosting the first, we think 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament at the PMAC this weekend as well, playing San Diego State late Saturday night. And then
late Saturday night.
Assuming they win that game, they will play Monday night against the winner of Florida State and George Mason. Reed Darcy and I did a full preview podcast on that on Monday's show. Also have just some little quick hit videos with Scott and Reed up throughout the week as well on that. So check that out at the LSU Sports at NOLA.com YouTube channel. And while you're there, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, give us a thumbs up, all of that good stuff. So let's kind of quickly dig into where LSU is right now. They're 20-1, Koki. They actually fell out of number 1. We talked to Joe Healy of D1 Baseball to help us preview the SEC baseball season last week, and he was making the argument for why D1 Baseball had LSU number 1. Then LSU goes and sweeps Missouri, and they drop them to number 2. I do think, to be fair to Joe and the guys at D1 Baseball who do a great job, that had more to do with what Tennessee did than anything LSU did wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think a lot of it had to do with just the scheduling of Tennessee playing a team like Florida this past weekend and sweeping and doing it in, really pretty dominant fashion. I think they run ruled them in the last game of that series, and that's going to kind of do it. And Tennessee hasn't lost a game yet. They've probably played the tougher schedule than LSU has after this past weekend, and yes, LSU got the job done against Missouri, but you had a tight Saturday game, and it just wasn't quite enough to hold on to that top spot. I think I saw somewhere from one of the D1 baseball guys, probably was Kendall Rogers, where he said this was the first time ever in D1 baseball's history where they dropped a team from number one. They hadn't lost a game. So it was just kind of this perfect storm of events for Tennessee to sort of leapfrog LSU. And I mean, if LSU had done that against Arkansas, I think they would still be number one right now. But I think the fact that it was against Missouri, I think kind of changed the math a little bit on that as well.
Yeah, and this is going to come out in the wash. I mean, obviously, if all goes according to plan, these teams, well, they'll play 3 times at Alec Box Stadium in late April. They may meet again in Hoover for the SEC tournament, and they may meet again in Omaha. So if this is all going to come out in the wash, we will find out who's actually the best team, LSU or Tennessee or somebody else. But for LSU's part, you can't complain. This is we talked about it last week, Koki. A home series against Missouri to start SEC play was a chance to get off to a good start. And you absolutely had to win that series, and you sure would like to sweep that series. And that's what they did. LSU sweeps Missouri. And, one thing you pinpointed was the bullpen. This was especially kind of a wild ride for this LSU bullpen on Saturday, which I know is the game that you attended and covered also, Scott. So that's really the key game. In some of these games between mismatched teams, there's going to be one game where the underdog has a chance. And for Mizzou, that was Saturday, and LSU was ultimately able to slam the door.
Barely, but they did. When I say barely, I mean seventh inning and in the eighth inning, they had the bases loaded a total of 3 times. And they only scored 1 run across those 3 bases loaded opportunities. The bases loaded, Missouri had the bases loaded and nobody out in the 7th inning, and only scored a run because DJ Primo, who's pictured in the screen here, got a double play to sort of get him out of it. And then Missouri was able to reload the bases after that. And so LSU put in Casey Evans into the game, the freshman who's been really spectacular for them out of the bullpen. He gets a ground out. But then, the adventure didn't really stop from there because Evans, gives up a hit, walks 2 batters, and all of a sudden the bases are loaded again with only 1 out. And then it's strikeout. Yeah, it's strikeout, and then he's out of it. And he was lights out in the 9th as well. So 44 pitches, 2 1/3 innings, and when you're only up by a run and you have literally no margin for error, it's a very, very impressive performance from Evans, even if it wasn't perfect.
This is, it was a close game against an outmatched opponent in Missouri, but it's good to have some of these tests. It's not good to be just, it's nice if you can just steamroll people, but it's nice to see a test. What do they do in a close game, in a tight situation with a 1-run game with people on base? I mean, you want to see what it is, and especially a freshman like Evans, who has just come in. And Koki, I don't know if you call him the biggest surprise of the early season for LSU, but certainly with Gavin Guidry not able to pitch, he's been hugely important to the start they've had. And exactly where LSU would be without him, probably not 20-1. So it's okay it's baseball. You're gonna lose some games. You're gonna have some close games even against poor teams. Wouldn't be a shock if, as we're recording this, if LSU lost to UNO. I mean, things like that can happen. Who'd they fall way behind in a midweek game recently and came back to win?
North Dakota State.
Oh, North Dakota State. It was a weekend game, but still, obviously an outmatched opponent who had like 1 win. So that could happen. So I think all in all, there was a lot of good for LSU over the weekend, especially from a psychological standpoint, to gain some confidence, but also to deal with some tests, especially that Saturday game.
We should mention we are recording this on Tuesday afternoon, and so LSU's game against UNO has not happened yet. That's why I said they were 20-1. That's why Rab references that game. We don't know what's going to happen in that game. So just for the record, we are recording this Tuesday afternoon
with an asterisk, like the home run record for Roger Maris with an asterisk.
20-1 and question mark.
Right.
In all seriousness, I think it was a business-like weekend for LSU. They did what they had to do. They scored runs early in all of these games. I think they were briefly behind in Saturday's game, but retook the lead right away. One Friday night 12-5, one Sunday 10-5, and the game was well in control. I think it was 10-3 until Missouri scored a couple runs late. So, business-like. If there's a downside, Koki, it's probably your Saturday and Sunday starters. Cade Anderson was great Friday night. He struck out 11. He pitched into the 7th inning. That's exactly what you want from your Friday night guy. Saturday and Sunday, Anthony Ianson and Chase Shores, not so much. Some struggles. Anthony Ianson on Saturday, he kind of scuffled around as LSU fell behind. He could not get out of the 4th inning. Ultimately, they had to relieve him with Connor Ware to get out of that 4th inning as Mizzou took the lead. And then on Saturday, Chase Shores also could not get out of the 4th inning. He threw 87 pitches and failed to escape that 4th inning as control was erratic. So if there's a concern, it's that these Saturday and Sunday guys, you'd love to get 5-6 innings out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of save the bullpen for when you're really going to need them when you get into postseason play and you're playing a lot more games in a shorter period of time. The games are more important, like the SEC tournament, like a regional, right? So, I mean, that was kind of the problem with the 2022 team where they didn't have enough starting pitching, even if the bullpen was able to sort of, get them through weekends. By the time they got to the regional in Hattiesburg, they had just sort of pooped out because they just were too tired. At least that's what it seemed like. So, with this LSU team, they're going to need Ianson to go deeper in the games. Maybe not 7 innings. I mean, it would be nice. Obviously, it'd be great if he went 7 innings for them, but that's not necessarily what this team absolutely needs as much as, say, last year's team did, because this team does have the bullpen depth. They have a bunch of guys who can go multiple innings. Like Connor Ware has been a starter. William Schmidt's been a starter on midweek games for them. When Gavin Guidry, when he comes back, is much more lengthened out. Kason Evans can go 2+ innings out of the bullpen. They didn't really have that last season, so that's a big help for them. But at the same time, you want these relievers to stay fresh as long as possible. And I just think it's going to be important for these starters to go a little bit further into games. And I think it's a little bit more true with Ianson than it is with Shores, because Shores is the Sunday guy. And if they can get anything out of the Sunday guy, even if it's just 3 2/3 innings, they'll take it compared to what they had last year. But at the same time, I think Ianson didn't really have his best stuff in terms of locating pitches on Saturday, especially in that 4th inning. Gives up the 3. He was a pitch away from getting through 4 innings and giving up only 1 run, which would have been actually okay. But the problem was he gives up a 3-run home run in the 4th, and all of a sudden it's 3 2/3 and 4 earned. And things can change just like that. But he was getting hit hard quite a bit in that game, and he was kind of finding his way in terms of just sort of escaping some jams. But and then with Shores, like you said, it was kind of the command issues, and it was like a run every inning after the first. So it's just not ideal, especially when you're facing a team like Missouri, who you sort of expect to sort of dominate. And I talked about we talked already about the wild weekend from the bullpen. Well, the bullpen had to pitch all these extra innings, 5 1/3 on Saturday and on Sunday. And that's just, and so you're going to give up a run here, a run or a run there, and you're going to give up a couple extra walks because relievers usually don't have as good a command as the starters. So that's kind of what you saw this past weekend. And again, those reasons it's just more reason for why the starters need to go longer into games.
Yeah. Rab, I again, we went through this with the women's basketball season that is coming to its conclusion here, where the team's 20-1. We're kind of picking nits. But I think Koki raises an important point that this is a problem that can snowball a little bit if these guys cannot get deeper into conference games, at least somewhat regularly.
Oh, no question. I mean, they've got to, do their part to protect the bullpen. And if you, like a lot of teams get to Sunday and it's kind of like all hands on deck, so that can be the case, but they're going to have to be better, because it almost seems like repeating yourself or a cliche. The SEC is really tough. I was just looking at the D1 rankings. Six of their next 9 conference series are against nationally ranked teams. you're starting with Texas, who's ranked 8th in D1 and I think 5th under the poll. So off to a great start, as Koki mentioned. So you're going to be tested, and you need these guys to come through. And I guess my question is for Koki is how chiseled in stone is this rotation with Ianson and Shores? Is there a possibility for someone else to step in if they go 2 or 3 SEC weekends and they're not getting the job done?
I mean, honestly, I could see it happening. I wouldn't rule it out at all. I think a lot of it's for the reasons that I said earlier, because they have relievers who can go longer. And some of those guys have already started games, whether it's the midweek with a guy like Connor Ware, who pitched, 4 no-hit innings until giving up a home run to start the 5th against DBU, which is probably the best team that they've faced so far this year. So like and Ware's had his struggles after that too, but he looked good this past weekend. So I don't really see a reason why he can't, potentially start if they need him to. I mean, William Schmidt's another answer. I think he threw 73 pitches in his last real start because he started a game before this past weekend, but he only threw an inning, so it wasn't really a start. So I think those 2 guys could be candidates to slide into a role if they need to do that. But I think, especially with Shores, they're going to give him like a decent leash just because he's coming off the Tommy John surgery as well. But if Ianson struggles for another couple more weeks, then you never know. I could see there could be a change after that. I don't think there'll be a change this weekend, but they definitely have the depth and the options, unlike last year, to potentially make that change if they want to.
That's a positive there. You're right. They couldn't have gone to a lot of places like, you got to work it out. Maybe this year they can work it out, or they can go option to another arm. I think everyone would love to see William Schmidt be good enough to be in the weekend rotation. I don't know if he can or not, but it's certainly a tantalizing possibility.
Or Zach Cowan. I mean, he's been so good out of the bullpen for them, and he's got length too. He can throw 3-4 innings in an outing if need be. He can throw it twice in a weekend and have one of those outings be multiple innings. Like he did that this past weekend against Missouri. So, and he's kind of got a rubber arm. I mean, this is a guy who threw at least over 200 pitches in a week at the Southern Conference tournament last year as Wofford's ace. He started 2 games in like 5 days or something crazy like that. Because he doesn't really throw as hard, he can kind of get away with, and doesn't throw as many breaking balls either, so he can kind of get away with that fastball changeup combination and dominate hitters, and he's just been dominating hitters so far throughout the season, and this weekend's going to be a good test for him against a pretty good Texas lineup.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a minute, but that's a great discussion because we did talk about it preseason, how much depth there could be on this pitching staff. And then Jay Johnson and company seem to settle on a weekend rotation pretty early in the season, but that doesn't mean they have to stick with it. Even if the team is winning, you may decide you're better off, and that's only a good thing for later in the year if everybody not everybody, but you have more guys with some weekend starting experience for when you do get into the postseason. So as long as LSU keeps winning, I don't think that they're going to fret about this necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some experimentation with those weekend starters. And the luxury that they have, as we kind of wrap up last weekend, is that this offense just continues to, we talk about this every week, Koki, but I'm just so impressed with the patience at the plate, with how hard they make it on opposing pitchers, even when all the hits aren't falling or the balls aren't leaving the yard. And the guy like that we have on the screen there, Derek Curiel, is the perfect example of that, where he didn't strike out once this weekend. He came to the plate, I think, 14 times. He walked twice. He was hit with a pitch once. He was 5 for 11. Only 1 extra base hit. He had a triple on Sunday. But he's just putting the ball in play and making the pitcher work. And if he's not seeing strikes, he's taking his base. And it's up and down the lineup. Like these guys are a very difficult team to pitch against.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like every inning they have a chance to score a run because someone's in scoring position at all times. And they're obviously very willing to take a walk. They rarely ever strike out. They do everything you'd want to do for an offense. And it's been a very, very impressive stretch of play where really since that Omaha loss, they've been lights out offensively, just fantastic at the plate, doing all those things that I just said. And, Derek's been the catalyst of it all, really, because when they started hitting well is when he became the leadoff hitter. And right now he's a .598 on base percentage. He's one of the league leaders, and he leads the SEC in batting average among all players, not among freshmen. And WRC plus, which is just at a scale of, or 100 is average. He's at 152, so he's about 52% above the league average for an SEC hitter, which is top 10 in the league. That's despite only hitting one home run. So he's just been absolutely brilliant for them, and he's gotten on base in every game for them, which it's just really, really hard to do because he's pulling a Dylan Cruz, as I like to say, because Cruz in that 2023 season got on base in every game, and right now I guess he's on pace to do that. I mean, I highly doubt he pulls that off by the end of the year. But heck, the way he's playing, it has been enough of a pleasant surprise for LSU that it's hard to put too much more past him. And I like to mention Curiel in part because I'm also working on a story on him that's coming out on Friday. So
nothing wrong with a shameless plug on the
theadvocate.com/LSU. Check it out. But Rab, I mean, obviously there have been a lot of great offenses in LSU baseball history. This one's a little bit different. They don't have a bunch of mashers up and down the lineup, but boy, do they put pressure on a pitcher. And they've got better pitching staffs to face as we go forward starting this weekend. But I think very good signs.
Yeah, I mean, Jared Jones has 7 home runs. Daniel Dickinson has 6. Stephen Milam has 5. I don't know, Koki, would you call that a bit of a surprise or not?
I think he's got a little bit more power than people thought heading into this season because he's not a big guy, but he's pretty strong and he's low to the ground. He does a good job of using that lower center of gravity to generate power. So
obviously the catcher position has been a little in flux. It looks like Hernandez is kind of establishing himself a little more. He's got 14 starts in the 21 games now. But you got some guys like John Pearson and Ethan Fry and Tanner Reeves who are all batting well over 300. With nice slugging percentages and on base percentages, and they're not regular starters or John, in case of John Pearson has not started the game, and Fry and Reeves have a lot more at bats, but it's like they might be starting for a lot of other teams or past LSU teams. I think it's a good sign for this team where they are so far. You might have an injury, obviously, someone may have to fill in. I mean, you have to expect that's going to happen. But for right now, I think the offense has been better than I anticipated it to be. Koki, I don't know if you would say that from your perspective, but
I definitely thought it would be better than last year when you have 6 returning starters and you're adding a guy like Dickinson and the potential. Just the greater depth that they had in the lineup when you add so many of those veteran transfers as well. But I didn't expect them to be this good. I didn't expect Derek Curiel to be, the leadoff hitter with a bullet, without question, and being their best hitter statistically to start the season. Did not expect that. And then add on to the fact that Milam is playing well and Jared Jones is playing well and Daniel Dickinson's playing well. And it's like pretty much everybody's playing well except for Michael Braswell. And even he had a couple hits this past weekend against Missouri. So they're just really, really deep, and they can match up against lefties when they put Ethan Fry in at DH. They can match up against righties, obviously, and Tanner Reeves plays more at third base when they face right-handed pitching, and he kind of went on a bit of a tear before the Missouri series. So they just have a lot more depth, a lot more options. They can beat you in different ways. I know that sounds very cliche, and some of it's small ball because they're running a lot more sack bunts this year than they have in the past, whether it's moving guys over or just running squeeze plays with guys on third base. But they're also hitting for enough power, and they're hitting a ton of doubles. So it's not like the 50s White Sox where it's just, base hit.
I'm usually the one with the obscure historical reference.
Yeah.
That was really good.
I was about to say of the 1950s, if you had told me there was going to be a 1950s White Sox reference in this show, Koki would not have gotten my bet.
I love it. I have a soft spot in my heart for the White Sox, especially the go-go Sox of the 50s.
Mini Minoso, yeah. Okay, so obviously, yeah, it's one thing. Derek Curiel's your best hitter, and it's like that might not be good, but it's not like anyone else isn't meeting expectations. He's just been that good. So that brings us, guys, to this weekend's trip to Austin. And as good as LSU has been, as we said, they're 20-1 entering Tuesday night's game. Again, Texas, I think they have a game Tuesday night as well. Entering that game, they are 17-1. So they just swept Mississippi State. They're also 3-0 in the league. They actually, they play UTSA Tuesday nights. They do have a game as well. Koki, what does Texas do well? Against Mississippi State, it was pitching. They were close games. They dominated the Bulldogs in Starkville pitching. They beat them 4-1 on Sunday and 5-3 in a doubleheader sweep because of weather. And then Friday night, the score was 8-7. So a little higher scoring, but like this is a legit team, probably the best team LSU's faced by a good bit.
Yeah, this is definitely the best team LSU has played. And in terms of I don't think they have great pitching depth necessarily, but the Mississippi State series, they had to play a doubleheader, and when you play doubleheaders in SEC play, they're just 7-inning games, and I think that kind of helped them out on that Sunday game. They kind of took advantage because their top end pitchers have all been really, really good so far to start the season, and like their bullpen, they definitely have some pretty interesting arms out of that bullpen. And then offensively, again, I don't think they're quite as deep as a team like LSU is. But they definitely have enough to scare LSU. Like they're second in the SEC in doubles, for example. But I think like the one thing I want to note in terms of like comparing LSU statistically with Texas is just, LSU's played 3 more games. So it kind of does skew the overall numbers a little bit between these two teams. But at the same time, I think LSU's better at strikeouts, but Texas has done a better job of getting weaker contact and just throwing more strikes. It seems like, because that's kind of been an issue for LSU lately, is just the strikes, walks. I think LSU leads the SEC in wild pitches. So just stuff like that has really hurt them from a pitching standpoint, even if they're not giving up a ton of hits. Home runs have been a bit of an issue for LSU as well. Less so of an issue for Texas, but I don't know how big a factor that's going to be in this series because Texas plays in a pretty big park. But balls in play, like that's going to be pretty big, and defense is going to be really big in the series because Texas, the dish, it's a turf field, so the ball is just going to fly on the ground. Keeping singles to singles and doubles to doubles instead of singles to doubles and doubles into triples or home run or inside the park home runs, like that's going to be pretty key because the ball's definitely going to skid on that turf. So it's going to be a really, really interesting series to watch, and I'm really curious to see what this means for LSU, especially from an offensive standpoint, because they haven't faced pitching this good. They haven't faced someone as good as Jared Spencer, the left-handed starter for Texas, even though Spencer did struggle a little bit against Mississippi State. But it's still a pretty big challenge for this LSU lineup, and it's gonna be. I'm really interested to see how they sort of live up to it.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like strength on strength, especially even if you drill down to the fact that, as you said, Koki, like Texas pitchers, they don't give away a lot of free stuff. We just talked about LSU's offense. They're really good at forcing you to give them that free stuff. So the rubber's going to meet the road in several different ways here. And again, look, it's still mid-March. There's still 8 SEC series to go after this. You don't like LSU started 3-12 in the SEC last year. So you can't sit here and say this is a huge series. But Scott, I do think there's kind of a litmus test feel to this. LSU's 20-1. They've done everything anybody could have wanted over the first 21 games. How good are they really as they face, their best opponent, have to go on the road to what's probably going to be a pretty good environment? I would think, especially Friday night in the series opener. So, I mean, do you agree with that? Or are we putting too much emphasis on this, saying we're going to find out what this LSU team really is?
Yeah, I think there's always a tendency to say it's a referendum team. I think more of a litmus test is better for both teams. I think Texas probably wasn't expected to be ranked this high, and LSU came into the season, ranked in the top 3 in every poll, and you can see if they lived up to that. That road trip Koki alluded to Texas, that was an impressive one, beating Dallas Baptist and those other teams in Frisco, and that was good. But this is a biggie. But it's not the be all end all. I mean, Florida just got swept at Tennessee this past weekend. And obviously, you want to start the SEC play that weekend, but their season's not over by any means. They're still a very talented baseball team, and they could come back and have a good season. But all that said, ideally, I think you've told Jay Johnson right now you can stay home and you get two wins. And just stay home. He would just stay home. I think instead of playing the 3 games. So that would be thrilled. I think either team would be thrilled to get 2 out of 3, and you're gonna be quasi happy just to get 1. But it doesn't have to be a referendum on the whole season. I think, especially from an LSU's perspective, it's like Texas is like, while Texas sometimes athletically runs with its shoes tied together. They got more money, enough money to make Solomon blush, to borrow a joke from Eddie Izzard, and they've got all this stuff, but they don't always look super great in athletics. They don't always dominate, but it seems like LSU, obviously, it seems like it's the poorer, smaller sister state, going over there to tackle the behemoth. But LSU can say it's the behemoth. But again, I don't think either school can come out of this weekend and we'll say we're so much better than you or not, or we're terrible. It shouldn't be that. And by the way, 38 College World Series appearances for Texas all time. That is the most by far.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, Rab, just because like LSU has the deeper team. Just from top to bottom with the roster, and Texas's pitching staff isn't quite as deep. They're third in the SEC in ERA, which is pretty impressive. But again, I think LSU is the deeper team on both sides of the ball. It's just a matter of, can LSU's bats sort of grind down those Texas pitchers, grind down those Texas starters, get into the belly of that Texas bullpen. That's when things could really tip in LSU's direction. And then on the flip side, can the starters go a little bit longer and really make those Texas bats work?
Yeah. By the way, the Eddie Izzard reference, that one I would have bet no amount of money on whatsoever that Koki would have been the one to make.
No.
That was Mr. Scott Rabalais. Okay, LSU at Texas, 7 p.m. Friday. That one is on SEC Network. Then 6 p.m. Saturday, 2 p.m. Sunday for the finale. Of course, that's barring any weather postponements or reschedules or anything like that. Let's hope we can keep away from that. What's the forecast like, Koki?
Apparently it's going to be really hot. On the Texas podcast I was on yesterday, they said it was going to be like 90 degrees or something crazy like that, which is like, what? I couldn't even believe it. I might have to double check that to make sure they were right, but might be worth checking that right now.
People talk about Austin all the time like it's Nirvana or something like that. It's like a hotter Baton Rouge with even more traffic. I don't get the attraction. I'm sorry.
It's 84 in Austin right at this moment. So I don't, but the high Friday is 79, high Saturday is 85, high Sunday 85 with a 20% chance of rain. So, let's
hot on that turf though. I went there.
Turf,
I went to Hitchcock, I guess in 21, Southern got sent over there for a baseball regional. And I know, you make note of the fact it's an all-turf field, which I despise. I hate an all-turf field. And but it's a long term. It's a bigger ballpark in terms of like Koki said, big outfield. Expansive. But the stands are not quite as big as Alex Buck Stadium. So I think they'll have a good crowd and they certainly get into it and they love their baseball at Texas. But it's on the intimidation factor. It's not. I don't think it's quite what the box is. But it'll be revved up for LSU, no question.
Yeah, no question. It'll be a fun time, and we will be back to talk about it next week on the LSU Sports Insider podcast. We're going to let Koki go get ready to cover that UNO game and take a quick break, and we'll be back in 30 seconds to talk SEC gymnastics finals with Scott. Back right after this.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider podcast. As we mentioned at the top of the show, it is a big weekend for LSU sports. Not only do we have that baseball series at Texas, you have women's basketball in the first 2 rounds, we think, of the NCAA tournament. Never want to take anything for granted, but the first 2 rounds will be at the PMAC, whether LSU is in the second round or not. But we think they'll take care of San Diego State Saturday, face the winner of Florida State and George Mason on Monday. And then in Birmingham, the LSU gymnastics team will be there. So will you, Scott, and LSU. It's another opportunity for them to meet up with Oklahoma, get ready to go defend their national title as we get into the postseason, and just, I mean, test yourself against some elite competition again.
Yeah, it's going to be elite, that's for sure. By the way, ESPN gives LSU a 98% chance of beating San Diego State. So I like their chances of playing Monday in the second round at home in basketball. But yeah, this is big too. I mean, this is big time. It's number 1 Oklahoma, number 2 LSU, number 3 Florida, and number 7 Missouri in the evening session in Birmingham. There's 2 sessions. The other sessions are the 5 teams. The SEC, again, I sound like a broken record. It's really tough in gymnastics, right? How tough is the SEC in gymnastics? All 9 teams in the SEC are there's only 9 gymnastics playing schools in the SEC are ranked in the top 16, and because it's 2 4-team sessions, the 9th place team, Arkansas, ranked 16th in the country, got left out. They're not even in Birmingham. That's rough. That's right, and they're going to be in NCAA regional. I mean, they're going to definitely, easily be in the NCAA championships in 2 weeks. So and they beat LSU in Florida during the season, but it's tremendous. I mean, some of the very best gymnasts in the country, and just looking at some of the all-arounders, the top all-arounders in the country who are going to be in that session. Leanne Wong, number 2 in the country from Florida, Faith Torres, also number 2, and Jordan Bowers. They're all tied for 2nd in the country in all-around average. Kaylin Chio from LSU, the freshman who's on the screen, is 5th in the country, number 1 in the country on vault. Aaliyah Finnegan, the number 10 all-arounder in the country. And then Haley Bryant, who doesn't have enough scores in the all-around to be considered that. She was only the SEC all-around champion and the NCAA all-around champion last year. So she's still rounding back into form, but a lot of tremendous gymnasts. And then in Missouri, they could have someone step up and claim a title. They've got a great beam performer. Her name escapes me for the moment, but Helen Hu. She should have had a 10 in the meet at LSU. Even Jay Clark said so. So there's going to be some great gymnastics talent on display. And the SEC, as again is often said, it might be harder to win the SEC championship than the NCAA championship. I would be harder pressed to see 4 teams in one of the semifinals in Fort Worth in April for the national championships that are better than these 4 teams that are going to compete Saturday night.
Yeah, and I mean, no doubt about it. And you laid it out. Number 16 Arkansas didn't even qualify for the SECs. Number 8 Kentucky, number 8 in the country, got sort of relegated to the morning session. Yeah, that's right.
Because
there's 4 teams in the SEC better than them, and you only have really room for 4 teams to compete at once with 4 events. So it's insane. It's going to be a lot of fun. What does it mean, Rab? LSU split the SEC regular season title with Oklahoma. They, I guess you could say they own the tiebreaker, so they won the SEC regular season tiebreaker. To pair that with an SEC tournament or SEC championships crown, the big prize is still a month away. That one's, the national championship, trying to go back to back. But this is a pretty big feather in your cap too.
Yeah, it's just one night. It's not the course of the season. I think for LSU to say especially with Oklahoma joining the league, and they've won 6 national titles for Oklahoma, and they've been number 1 all season. For them to join the league and for LSU to beat them in the dual meet in Baton Rouge and to gain a share of the SEC championship says a lot. But this is the traditional championship. The SEC's only had a regular season championship since 2017. This is how traditionally the SEC champion has been decided with this one meet, one night, and you're on. And like they said on the broadcast last year, the national championships, you raise your hand and you make your performance and you see where it goes. And so again, it's not necessarily, I could see LSU winning. I could see LSU finishing 3rd. And neither one is like, one that says, oh, they're the best, definitely the best team in the country, head and shoulders, or are they not as good as these teams? You could easily see these teams, all 4 of these teams, plus some other SEC teams in Fort Worth in April when 8 teams make it to the national semifinals. So, yeah, it says a lot. It's a great feather in your cap, and LSU obviously they won this meet last year when it was at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, and that kind of propelled them to the success they had in the NCAA championships. But it's big, and it's got the history behind it. It goes back to 1981. So, but it's just one night, and it's not the be all end all. And if you don't do well in this one, you don't have to say, well, we can't win the national championship, because I think especially for LSU, OU, and Florida, that's certainly not the case. Right.
And Oklahoma was obviously not in the SEC last year when LSU won the SEC championship in New Orleans. So it's that much more difficult. LSU's rotation will be bars, beam, floor, and they'll end on vault. Oklahoma will go the traditional vault, bars, beam, floor. And then there's also Missouri and Florida involved in that night session. 7 p.m. Saturday night. It is on the SEC network. Should be a lot of fun. Health-wise and just sort of momentum-wise, Rab, the national championships are April 17th and 19th in Fort Worth. How is LSU trending toward that? I mean, they still have the regional meet after this, of course, but do you feel like it's another season where maybe Jay Clark's team is peaking at the right time?
I definitely think so. I mean, they had they've had like 4 straight scores over 198. They had a season high road score at the River Center. Then they had a all-time program high 198.575 against Georgia 2 weeks ago. Then they had a 198.2 on the road to win at Auburn this past Friday. So that was their best road score of the season by far. Haley Bryant, who came back for her 5th year, started off slowly. She had an elbow injury in December. Only has been doing it all around the last few meets, but she's not 100% Haley Bryant. She hasn't shaken off all the rust, if you will, but she's also a lot fresher than she typically would be this time of year, and that means something for someone who's 23 years old. She's kind of old by college gymnastics standards, but I think the concerns are they'd love to have KJ Johnson on floor. She shared the SEC floor title last year with Kaya Johnson from LSU, who's left the team. But she's had an ankle problem. They're probably just going to use her on vault, and that's it. They'd love to have Kalia Lincoln, a very talented freshman who was an Olympic alternate last year for the U.S. team. I think they're hoping to get her back for regionals. She's not going to do anything. She's going to need off-season shoulder surgery, but her floor routine is explosive. But you got this core now of these 3 all-arounders, Bryant, Finnegan, and Chio, who can compete with anyone in the country. And Kaylin Chio, we've been saying, is one of the best freshmen in the country. Well, she's one of the best gymnasts in the country. I mean, it's been proved, like I said, fifth all-arounder, number 1 on vault, top 10 in a couple of other events. And she's just been rock solid for them, very, very mature and rock solid for them all year. And that gives LSU a nucleus, kind of like you say in basketball with Flaugier and Anissa Morrow and Michaela Williams, that you can put up against anybody.
Yeah, and then the good news is nobody can get these core gymnasts in foul trouble. So that's right. All right, so that'll be a lot of fun Saturday night. Like I said, it's a big weekend, and I guess the good news of the women's basketball team tipping off so dang late is that you can watch that whole gymnastics meet and probably still have time to get a late dinner and then see the basketball game. Like,
I know, pretty much, right? Yeah, with 4 teams, it's going to run a little longer, a little over 2 hours. But yeah, right around the time they're wrapping up in Birmingham, the basketball will be tipping off. Of course, we don't know. Can I just say for a second, why did ESPN give LSU this time? I know they're playing a West Coast team, but I mean, 8:15. I can see it 8:15. Which is 6:15 in San Diego. But at 9:15 in Baton Rouge, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, and they're going to play. If they win, they're going to play Monday night. In Monday evening. And the 9:15, by the way, is only if Florida State George Mason ends within 2 hours, which we all know with college basketball games with reviews anymore often don't. So it could be even later than 9:15. Right. I want to say one more thing about gymnastics. Monday, they will find out their national seeding and where they're going. They could be 1 or 2 where they are now, or 3 at worst. And they'll go on the road. The regionals are predetermined. They're in Seattle, Washington, Salt Lake City, Utah, Tuscaloosa, and State College, PA. So you don't get to host because you did well, like you do in basketball or baseball. And then so that's in 2 weeks, and then they have another week off, and then they hope to go to nationals. So 2 teams from each regional advance to nationals, and then 2 teams from each session advance to the final, and that's how they determine the national champion.
And we will continue to follow it all on the LSU Sports Insider podcast, because that's what we do. We'll follow women's basketball, a post-game show for you coming Monday night. Also, of course, the baseball series and the SEC gymnastics final, spring football. We'll have an update on that next week. And at some point, we got to get Toyloy Brown on here to wrap up the men's basketball season and where that program goes. Imagine if they were playing this weekend. By the way, since brackets are on everybody's mind, who you got in the men's tournament, Scott?
Who have I got? Tell me if Cooper Flagg's going to be healthy or not, because I like.
Let's say he'll be healthy by the Sweet 16.
Okay, I like what they did in the ACC tournament. With him banged up, right? I mean, that was impressive to me. Yeah, I like them, and I don't trust Auburn the way they're playing right now. I don't trust Tennessee. A lot of people like Florida. Florida could go a long way. But I think it's it's like on the men's and the women's side. You can still look at 6, 7, 8 teams. You can say, oh, it wouldn't shock me if they won the national championship. But I'm going to go with Duke if Flagg is healthy, and I'm sure he's going to play. It sounds like he really wants to get back out there. If he's healthy, yeah, I like their chances.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against Duke. I will, just for the sake of being contrarian, I'll go with the Houston Cougars. I think
Houston's not bad.
They have not lost a game in regulation this year.
Really,
it's a pretty amazing stat, and it's not like the Big 12. The Big 12 is not the SEC this year, but it's no picnic either. So
I'm curious to see how St. John's does. Rick Pitino. Yeah. I heard they were saying during the SEC tournament that Florida's coach Todd Golden, they said they played them last year, said it was a struggle to get the ball up court every time against them. They're a 2 seed against the Omaha Mavericks, who apparently I looked this up. I found this yesterday. Every time they win a big game, they destroy a garbage can. So if they could upset St. John's, they're probably going for a garbage truck.
Wow, I like that. But
they're like a 70s rock band, apparently.
By the way, I know I haven't heard this mentioned a whole lot, but opposite of that game in that bracket is Kansas against Arkansas. It's Bill Self against John Calipari, and the winner presumably plays Rick Pitino. You got 3 national championship coaches in that little pod right there.
Wow. That only happened by accident. That just didn't happen.
Yeah. We know the committee only does these things randomly. So, hey, enjoy the brackets, enjoy the games this weekend, and enjoy a big sports weekend at LSU. We will be back next week with a lot more. For Scott Rabalais and also for Koki Riley, who previewed the LSU Texas baseball series with us, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.